Hello, everyone. In this video, we will be talking about supply chain management. Supply chain management is important in operations management. And I thought it is important to bring it to the beginning of the semester so you could reflect later on the topics that we will be taking in the semester. In the first chapter, we did talk about operations management as a definition, why this is important, some of the challenges, some of the trends, and also we talk about some opportunities, job opportunities as operations managers. Now, in this chapter here, it's going to be again very similar, but now we're talking about the supply chain management, not just only the operations, but we're going to go into the activities that will bring a product to a customer or service to the customer. We will be starting from the supplier all the way to the end customer. This is what is supply chain management. So let's go ahead and get started. The best way to describe supply chain management is to start by talking the value that will bring to you as a person, as a customer. And then we could apply what we've learned into the bigger picture of the supply chain management. Now, as a customer, what we do is we think that when we go to the store, we pick the item from the shelf and we pay for it, and that's basically it. However, there is a whole system behind the process to make this item available for you on the shelf. And that system consists of people, technology, engineers, designers, etc. They're a huge system, and that system called supply chain. The supply chain is the process of moving the activity or the process of providing the activity from the supplier to the manufacturers, to the distributor, to the retailer, to the shopper, the end customer. And also there is a flow, product flow goes from the supplier to the shopper. And then there's information flow, which goes from the customer all the way back to the supplier. There's also financial flow, which is basically the money and the contract that we will be signing with a customer. And the money itself, when we collect it to the customer, goes in a different supply chain. So what I want you to know is the end customer is the target. And in order to meet the customer needs and the market needs, what we have to do, we have to plan ahead of time with a supplier, manufacturers, distributors, and then eventually the retailer to make it available to the shelf. So it is a huge system that we are dealing with. All right, let's see how we could define supply chain. Supply chain is the sequence of organizations and facilities and functions and activities. So it's not only the organizations, but the facilities, the functions, and the activities that are involved in producing and delivering product or service to whom? To the final customer. And this is also called the value chain because it's bringing a value to the customer. As long as you bring a value to the customer, it's called the value chain. And also something related to the supply chain, and we will be talking about this later on, the logistics. The logistic is the process of moving a part from one party to another, or the part of supply chain involved with the forward and reverse flow of goods, service, cash, and information. So the process of moving these items, that's called logistics. Now let's keep it simple. Supply chain, think about it as an input, processing, value added, and output, and there is a feedback. So that would be the basic transformation process. When we talk about any process, any value-added process, we think about input, raw material, value-added activity, processing, coloring, painting, finishing, and the output would be the good or the service that provided to the customer. And there is a feedback in there. Same thing, supply chain it consists of input, some input coming from the customer, the input coming from the customer. We as a supply chain managers, we process this, and the output is basically planning. And through this process, there is a control in there. Now let's take another example here. This is the supply chain for a bread. What is a supply chain for a bread? The supply chain of a bread start with the field right there where it costs the whole wheat 25 cents per pound. However, this is not actually what the customer is paying for. The customer is paying for moving the wheat to the processing facility, and that will cost 33 cents on the top of the 25 plus the transportation to be equal to 33 cents per pound. And then moving that to the facility will do their part. That will cost the customer 48 cents from the finishing facilities, from there to transform it from wheat into flour, and then it will be transformed to the baker with the transportation cost. That would cost 56 until we send it to the baker. The baker will do his magic, and then we'll make the bread $1 available for the customer, and then the bread will get transport to the retailers, and then we have to consider the transportation cost as well, and then make it available to the customer in the retailer store for $1.29. So moving through that all chain from the farmer to the logistic company, trucking company who moved it from the farmer to the finishing or the processing facility, and then move it to the baker, and the baker will bake it for the customer and then send it through the trucks to the retailer. That's what we call the supply chain, and that where the customer will need to receive his final product. So if I ask you, think about the elements. Now, what are the elements that consist of the supply chain management? There are different elements, including the customers that they need things. We have to make this available, and we have to forecast. That's another element of forecasting of supply chain, is to forecast the needs of the customer, the volume, and the time when they need it. The designers will involve in there and make the specific design for the customer. Process capability or the planning capability. Do we have enough machines? How many people they should work? And then we have to match that with the demand, look at the demand and find out the people who will need to work with you. And then processing, where we need to ensure the process itself transforming from raw material to finished product. And in there, what we have to consider the quality, and also we need to consider the schedule work for people. And another element of supply chain, a big element of the supply chain, is inventory. Inventory important, and we need to, it's important to meet the demand requirement while managing the cost of inventory. We have to manage the cost of inventory where if you want to save this with a raw material or finished product, you still have to pay for it. But the end objective or the goal for having inventory is to send it to a customer. We need to be sent to a customer. We need the customer, when they go to the grocery store, they will find their item available there. Purchasing is another important concept in supply chain, and we have to conduct different things such as evaluating suppliers, and we need to ensure that they could deliver on time, they're flexible. We need to maintain the relationship with suppliers. Location is another important aspect, where we could find the best location for our facilities, and logistics, how we could move information and material through different parties in the system, in the supply chain system. So when we talk about facilities, that could be like warehouse, factories, processing center, distribution centers, outlets, the retailers' outlets, and offices for just people, administrative people who will help and support the process. All these are facilities. Now, if we talk about the activities, if I ask you, said, okay, well, from what we did say, what we covered so far, what are the activities? You will see, okay, well, for sure, we need to forecast the demand. We need to make sure that there is a demand available for us, so we could plan ahead of time, and we could make sure that we have enough people and put them on a schedule to make these products. we have to have a purchasing department who will purchase the raw material. We will have to manage the inventory with the raw material once we receive it from the supplier, or once we finished it, we need to make sure that we have enough a good place to save it there. Information management, how we could manage this information and have a secure place to save this information. Quality assurance, how I could ensure the quality of my products and my service. Scheduling is also important because I want to match the demand with the supply, and therefore we have to create a schedule. And the schedule is important to meet the deadline. And in order to meet the deadline, we have to follow the schedule. Production and delivery, we have to manage the production itself, what the process itself, the value added thing, the value added for activities, and deliver it to the customer. And also the last thing, the last part is customer service is another activity on the supply chain. We have to take care of the customer. We have to maintain the relationship with the customer. There is a system these days called customer relationship management, CRM, where they take care of the relationship with the customer. They send them like happy birthdays email, or they send them some offers, or they communicate with the customer regarding the recent visit, etc. So that's called the customer relationship management. All right, if I want to define the supply chain management, we have so far covered the supply chain and the different activities, but we haven't talked about the management part or the managing part of the supply chain. The supply chain management is the strategic coordination of business functions within a business organization and throughout its supply chain for the purpose of integrating supply and demand management. So managing all these activities to match the supply with the demand. That's the short definition for supply chain management, or the strategic coordination of business functions, different functions within the business or outside of the business through the whole supply chain management. And we have one purpose for the supply chain management, which is integrating supply and demand management. Integrating supply and demand management, that's the goal. And I'd like to end this video with the last slide here, talking about the supply chain managers. The supply chain managers are different levels in the organization. Could be in the purchasing, could be in the marketing, could be in production, could be in the operations. There are different levels. All these people will be responsible for managing supply and demand across the business and within the organization or outside as well, coordinating and collaboration with the partners. In what they have to do, these are some of the activities that involve their planning and coordinating, sourcing and procurement of material. So they have to secure the material, the raw material that we need. Transformation activities, the production activity inside, the logistics, moving product and services from one place to another, from one part to another. That would be the responsibility of supply chain managers. All right, with that said, I would like to end the video right here. Thank you very much, and I will see you in another video continuing on the supply chain management. Thank you.